It is a truth universally acknowledged at this point that Marvel are desperate. Let's be honest, they've been desperate for ideas since 2022 and the disaster that was She-Hulk aired. Maybe it even goes back farther than that, and they've been desperate for ideas since Endgame left theaters. Who knows? In my personal opinion, they realized that they had hit a certain peak with the Infinity Saga, and if they didn't do something soon to top what they had already given to fans, well, then they were going to lose interest and the franchise would wither and die a slow, painful death like so many other popular series. The irony is that in trying to preserve their popularity and success by throwing every possible obscure character they had at us and just bombarding the audience with content, well, they've managed to fail anyway. The Marvel Disney Plus shows were fine when they were about characters that we actually knew, but if you look past the surface level and analyze the writing, a pattern has begun to emerge that doesn't bode well for the storytelling that has always been so stellar. From Monica Rambeau justifying Wanda's mind enslavement of an entire town, to the new Captain America condoning terrorism in a pedestrian speech that completely reveals a globalist agenda, to Loki rolling over and exposing his belly to the Wish version of himself, and just literally everything that's happened afterwards, well, it's easy to see that Marvel has been in a death spiral for at least 2 years. The life has gone, the inspiration is dead, and they are pretty much a zombie wandering around in a bad horror film looking for anything else to devour. Any character that might generate the slightest bit of interest is apparently getting a television show these days, and it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's just become content that people are expected to consume to get ready for the next project coming down the pipeline. But then sometimes we get hit with a show that's so bad that it isn't just content anymore, and the buzz around it is so minimal that it's hard to view it as anything other than a mistake. And that is certainly the case with Echo. Since 2022, I have only watched bits and pieces of the Marvel Disney shows. Nothing has really occupied my interest in them at all, and it's become increasingly obvious that they are out of ideas and panicking because of it. Every character that gets a show seems to be worse than the last, and now it's really a question of how bad they can make a character before the pipeline of money dries up completely. Enter Maya Lopez. She first made her appearance in a low-level Hawkeye show in 2021 that no one watched and no one cared about, and as part of the literary genius on display in that show, wanted revenge against Hawkeye for the death of her father. Surprise, surprise, it turns out that her uncle is Kingpin and he ordered the hit on her father, and so Maya ends the show by killing him instead, shooting him right in the face. Basically, 2 years later, we meet up with Maya Lopez again, back on her way to her hometown to outrun the rest of Kingpin's men and lay low, while also avoiding all of the members of her family in Tamaha, Oklahoma, who seem to have a vested interest in her returning. From start to finish, this show is an absolute mess. It contains a character who, for half the show, has a completely different tonal and thematic quality from the other half. In episodes 1 through 3, Maya is obsessed with taking down Kingpin's empire in a one-woman harebrained scheme where she plants a bomb on the train of his supplies and blows up his warehouse in New York, killing a lot of people in the process. She disregards her uncle's warnings completely about not causing trouble and has the audacity to say that she is controlling all of the chaos that surrounds her. This show was filled with utterly mind-bending dialogue, but the lines Maya says to Henry are maybe some of the most mind-numbing. She is selfish, careless, single-minded, murderous, an utterly blank canvas of emotion, so she's impossible to get a read on or relate to. And did I mention that she's a sociopath as well? I never got the feeling at any point in this show that Maya cared about anything or anyone in her family. She continuously brought trouble down on them. She didn't care if her actions got them hurt. She demanded their help even though she had done nothing to earn it. She blamed them for things that she had no right to blame anyone for. She was a Terminator in every aspect of the word, but not in a way that was a plot device, in a way that actually turned her into a robot, incapable of doing anything except following the programming that she herself had allowed to be encrypted into her. To top it all off, the show does a switch in the themes in the 4th episode and onwards, and the show desperately tries to make Maya into a more sympathetic character by introducing elements of her ancestors and trying to make it a bit more about connecting with her history, attempting to implement softer aspects into her character. It is as much of a failure as it is bizarre. Maya displayed absolutely no interest in her family background prior to this, and even though she had a moment where she used her ancestors' abilities to push the train car off her trapped leg, it was a clumsy attempt at best and outright laughable at worst. But it seems as if the showrunners realized that they hadn't injected enough of the diversity that they thought this show desperately needed, so they used a metaphorical shoehorn to wrench some more in it. It was the only thing they could do, given that the actress is not nearly charismatic enough to carry a show like this, but it was still awkward and clumsy and matched up poorly with the sociopath they still clearly wanted Maya to come across as. I could go into detail about the fight scenes, but we all know how awful they are compared to the fight scenes that Marvel used to do. We all know that a 90-pound woman kicking a solid metal chair into someone is as unrealistic as it gets. This isn't a show where Maya had her powers off the bat. She didn't have super strength, she doesn't have some other type of resiliency power, she's just a girl punching above her weight, and the writers are trying desperately to ensure that the audience doesn't notice. Another thing that they were hoping that we didn't notice is their demolition of Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin. Whatever mystique and terror he held in Daredevil is completely obliterated as he tries to hold on to a girl with next to no significance, a girl who tried to kill him, and yet he somehow still wants back in his empire. The writers made him out to be some sort of jilted ex-lover, desperately pining for his partner and trying to do anything to win her back. He shows up with her favorite foods, brings her gifts, offers her the world, and then some, and begs her to come back to him for reasons that aren't really established. In fact, if he were Maya's jilted ex-lover, it would make much more sense than what we got. Maya has next to nothing to offer his criminal empire, and for every Maya Lopez, there will always be someone better and more skilled who doesn't have the limitations that she does, who will be stronger, who may in fact have more effective powers than somehow manifesting the abilities of her dead relatives, which the show doesn't really explain how she knows how to do. She just sort of wills it into existence. There wasn't really a villain in this show, unless you count Maya. Echo didn't have any understanding of what it wanted to be. At times it was a family reunion, at times it was a treatise on the women of Maya's past family, at times it was a crime drama, at times it tried to be a coming-of-age story with the revelation of her so-called powers. But the one thing that I never got the feeling that it was a superhero show. There was nothing heroic about it. Maya is not a character to emulate. She is not someone to admire or look up to. She is not someone who can be related to, and she is certainly not a hero. She is an entitled, narcissistic murderer who happens to be both mixed race and disabled, which apparently is enough to erase any and all of her past sins. She wants power until she suddenly doesn't, has no self-awareness until she suddenly does, and decides to heal the toxic white man in the show with her powers, and suddenly turn him into a politician instead of the mafia boss that he always was. Everything about this show was completely and utterly pathetic. It is both everything and nothing at the same time, a banging gong or a clanging cymbal that draws attention but doesn't hold it because of how annoying the noise that it makes is. Maya has no connection to the wider world of the MCU. She does not take over Kingpin's criminal empire, even though that was all that she wanted to do in the beginning of the show. Instead, she keeps her powers and stays with her family, riding off into the proverbial sunset. But maybe that's the only good thing that this show did. By ensuring that Maya stayed with her family and away from New York, where all the action seems to be, and her uncle, they effectively ensured that we never have to see her again. Thanks, writers. Maybe there was some intelligence to this show after all. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. What did you think of Echo? Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments section, and let the conversations begin. Until next time, everyone.